speak loudly? So you're in our Records of Rights Gallery. It's one of our permanent exhibitions. Every document in this room, the anchor of this is the 1297 Magna Carta. 1297 version, it's the last version. It's a very generous billionaire named David Rubenstein, who probably for auction, and a gentleman named Ross Kraft $1 million, and gave it to the National Archives on a permanent loan to raise money from veterans' medical bills, so a very good cause. David Rubenstein purchased it for $21.5 million.
Wow.
Great return on Ross Pro's investment. So we have us now anchoring this exhibit. If you could read Latin, you could read this document. It's phenomenally evolved over the 250 years till today. It shows how our conservation staff works. So we have conservators that, you see a hole at the bottom, they will mend the hole, they will clean the paper. So this document, was this handwritten? Yeah, it's handwritten with a
So where are the rest of the Magna Carta?
So most of conservation staff.
You see them?
Okay, bet.
Sure.
Wow.
If everyone could gather here in the middle, we're going to tell you about this room in the middle here. Got everybody?
Yes.
All right. So this is welcome to the two-word Library of Congress. And there was a very stubborn librarian who didn't want to let them go, which I can't really blame him. They are two of the coolest documents. And President Truman in 1952 ordered that they be delivered to the National Archives.
Oh,
They had this big ceremony with tanks and military personnel, and they drove them down from Capitol Hill to the big steps you may have seen outside before you came in. They walked them up the steps. This used to be the original entrance back here, these big doors. And they brought them in, and they pretty much have been here ever since. The only time we took them out was in 2000 when we did a renovation.
The Declaration of Independence to John Hancock, who was President of the Continental Congress. James Madison giving a draft of the Constitution to George Washington, who was President of the Constitutional Convention at that time. This was before we had the government under the Constitution. And you can come and quit in 1787, and then it was approved by the states in 1788. So that's how
It's the Capitol. This is the corner here.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm going to let him do all the fun storytelling.
Legislative commissions, so think like the 9/11 Commission and others, and then we also manage the records, the administrative records of legislative branch agencies like the Library of Congress. So that are the records of the House and the Senate. And so I've pulled a small sampling of kind of the best of the best. At 2,000 cubic feet of paper records just for the House and the Senate. Most of those records are stored in this building. We have an off-site facility over by Union Station. It's over there because the Congress mandated that any of its records need to be in close proximity in case they ever want them, and which gets at some of the other unique components of our records that come from executive branch agencies. they become the property of the National Archives once they arrive here. But because the House and the Senate are part of the legislative branch and for separation of powers, Congress, the House, and the Senate each retain legal ownership of those records in perpetuity. So the way that really kind of gets at the unique kinds of roles that Congress has played in American society over the years, and how that's changed. And so, when we think Congress, we tend to think like lawmaking and dark, smoky rooms and all of that stuff. And what's really cool about the records of Congress is that they have so much more than that, because they're informed by what's happening in the country at the time. And so any kind of crazy sort of hot button issue that bubbles up, document that Alexander Hamilton wrote, everything that we owe and needs to be paid for. And that way she could have put together a clear accounting of what their finances were. She was not supposed to see the letter unless he died.
Oh.
So maybe he wasn't telling.
I don't think she knew.
Maybe he wasn't. So he's just a guy from head at the top, right? This is a printed form and then written on it. The signatures at the bottom here are from Susan B. Anthony, Matilda Gage, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. So 3 of the main leaders of and this is from 1917.
It's type.
Yep.
Typewriting.
1917. And you'll see down the side are the names, all women, mostly spouses and significant others of members of Congress and other leading figures in Washington, D.C. society. Giving women the right to vote would provide them with the opportunity to annoy and pester every legislator in the United States until a majority of the men in the legislature surrendered their judgment and principles to political threats and cajolery. They also say that no legislature in the United States would be able to meet without being surrounded by suffrage pickets, and that giving women the right to vote would, quote, be an official endorsement of nagging as national policy. And they even underline it. Yeah, there you go. So this is a really popular document that we show. That were taking place in the House of Representatives, 1964, of amendments to the original bill. And then you can see the stamps as to whether they were approved or not. And this is turned to a page whereby Howard K. Smith, who was a representative from Virginia, introduced an amendment into that bill to, in addition to race and religion. So the original incarnation of the bill sought to outlaw discrimination in public places on the basis of race and religion. However, ultimately it is passed through. So his hope in introducing the amendment that it would ultimately kind of sidetrack the bill does not come to fruition. But in the United States, it's the inclusion of this word that then leads to lots and lots of other legislative acts. So when we think about like Title IX provisions and things like protections for women in the workforce and all of that, senator to speak for as long as they want of people in the Senate at the time that you can't just sort of do stuff. And so if you want to halt or curtail this right that all members had to speak until they decided they were done speaking, you had to hold a vote, and the body had to agree to end that right. So that's what before World War II. And so as part of that...
Is it the map?
That is a map.
Oh, okay.
And so the plots, which we now know were the Japanese squadron as it approached Pearl Harbor. Osgood had the last cabinet position, and that was as Postmaster General for Supreme Court justices. The Senate provides advice and consent on those. Nomination of Thurgood Marshall to be the first African American justice of the United States Supreme Court.
Lyndon Johnson.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's his signature.
Yeah.
Big and bold,
Yes.
signature.
Yeah. Okay.
Abraham Lincoln's nomination of Ulysses Grant to be the head and the leader of the United States Army during the Civil War.
It has lines, you know. The paper has lines.
Yep, the paper has lines, so you see we're moving up into sort of the industrial period. You'll also notice that instead of the White House, it says Executive Mansion. One of the other unique things about this document is that it's written entirely by Abraham Lincoln. He was Lieutenant General, which had not been held by any member of the American military since George Washington. So in that sense, he is giving him a power and authority over the American armed forces that no American had had since George Washington. For one reason or another, we'll send messages to Congress, sometimes to try to sort of cajole them or push them to support their legislation. January of 1935, so you'll see it's
Typed.
moving, yep, it's typed. Kind of a more standard format that maybe we would see today.
Wow. This signature is good.
Coming from President Thomas Jefferson from 1804, basically letting the Congress know that the Louisiana Purchase had been completed.
What is the purchase?
The
Rules?
Louisiana Purchase is
Yes.
the process by which the United States bought most of the western part of the country from France.
Oh, okay.
So think like west of the Mississippi.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Materials that would have gone in because Congress oversaw that process. It's under Thomas Jefferson's direction and at his discretion that that purchase is made. But then what happens to that land afterward, that really becomes the discretion of Congress. So maybe the most significant that we have, this is the front of the first page and the back of the last page of President George Washington's first inaugural address to the Congress. So this is written entirely in by George Washington, and it's signed by him at the bottom. It was delivered not in Washington, D.C., but to the Congress in New York City, Federal Hall, on April 30th, 1789.